Hi guys! Did you know that Tevinter is considered to be the oldest human nation in Thedas? It stands as a monument to power, ambition, and the enduring legacy of magic. At first glance, it's a land of powerful magisters and breathtaking cities, but beneath the surface lies a history far more complex. One shaped by class divisions, forbidden magic, numerous rebellions, and powerful alliances. But first things first. As you know, I was blessed with much work recently, but still, I will do my best to devote the weeks before the Veilguard to the Tevinter world, as it's completely different from the typical Thedas we know, yet it's still fascinating. Let's start talking. Tevinter is a magocracy, meaning that political, social, and economic power is concentrated in the hands of mages. It presents several thematic and narrative challenges that can be harmful to both the society and the broader story arc in Dragon Age universe. These elements offer rich opportunities for storytelling, to be honest, but they also highlight the darker aspects of a system that focuses power in the hands of a few, particularly those who wield magic. The harms caused by this system are multi-layered and can drive significant conflicts in the story. Today, we will talk about one that relates to the theme of this video. The rigid class structure ensures that power remains concentrated in the hands of the elite, while the rest of society is oppressed. This unequal distribution of power encourages deep anger among those with little to no say in the governance of their own lives. This oppression could be a major driver of a new rebellion, which we might witness in the next game, as the lower classes become increasingly desperate and/or upset with the ruling magisters. Slaves actually rebel pretty often there, unfortunately to no avail. However, having shadow dragons by Rook's side and the fact that the game is set in Tevinter, we might see a big rebellion that would shift the very culture in this part of Thedas. The social unrest could destabilize the entire empire, leading to disputes and revolutions. Characters, particularly Mage Rook, might struggle with the morality of their own position within this system, creating internal and external conflicts. We already know that Rook is against blood magic, so what other narrative surprises shall we see? Tevinter society is strictly divided into classes, with mages at the top. The ruling class is composed of mages, and this group has authoritarian hierarchies based on magical ability, family status, purity of the bloodline, and influence. If we analyze the key elements of the class system among people in Tevinter, we will get a disturbing picture. At the top of the hierarchy are the Altus, who are descendants of the Dreamers, or magisters who possessed the ability to speak to the old gods in the Fade. While the old gods are no longer targets of worship in Tevinter, the descendants of these powerful mages are still held in high esteem and are often the highest-ranking mages in the Imperium. The majority of magisters are from the Altus class. By the way, do you remember Corypheus from Dragon Age Inquisition? And, well, partly Dragon Age 2? And his bravado about seeing the Black City? Yeah, well, he was from the Altus class. And he, with all other Altus mages, was disdained back in the day for allegedly unleashing the Blight. Good to know that with the Veilguard we will learn the whole truth, right? But after the magisters were blamed for corrupting the Golden City and turned into the first Darkspawn, and during this period when the Imperium began to recognize unrest in terms of faith and religion, many Altus mages were slaughtered. However, since then, they have returned to the upper echelon of Tevinter society. As you can see, this system is corrupted. The Altus are considered the most powerful and prestigious class in Tevinter, and many of them belong to ancient, noble bloodlines that date back to the time when Tevinter believed in the old gods. Today, the most politically influential members of the Altus often occupy higher-ranking positions in the magisterium, the ruling house of Tevinter. The Altus are typically wealthy and own vast estates, along with many slaves. Below the Altus are the Laetan mages, who come from less prestigious backgrounds, so to speak. They may not have the pure bloodlines of the Altus, but they are still respected as mages and can achieve significant power and influence through merit. Some Laetan mages serve in the magisterium, though they are often seen as less worthy by their Altus counterparts. Their families are relatively new to wealth and status compared to the Altus, but they still can accumulate power and influence. Praeteri is a curious class. It is a lesser known or less defined group that sits somewhere below the Laetan, but they are still recognized as mages. While details about their role in Tevinter society are less well developed in the lore, they might occupy the lowest position within the mage hierarchy, though still far above non-mages. If the Altus are called dreamers, the Soporati are sleepers in mage society. The Soporati are the non-magical citizens of Tevinter. They become commoners, merchants, artisans, and anyone who doesn't possess magical abilities. This is a mainly human class whose members are allowed to own property and serve in Tevinter's military, but they have no real power in the nation's governance and are unable to attain a high rank in the imperial Chantry. Technically, they are excluded from all kinds of power. When a Soporati family produces a mage child, a greatly desired outcome in Tevinter, unlike in the rest of Thedas, it allows them access into the Laetan class and thus a higher social standing. In general, the Soporati and ruling mage classes coexist in constant tension due to the inequality. Although the Soporati are part of society and can achieve wealth and influence in their own way, they are always second-class citizens compared to mages. Their opportunities for political power are limited since Tevinter's ruling body, the magisterium, is almost entirely made up of mages. The Soporati may work for or serve the powerful mage families, but they do not wield genuine influence. At the bottom of the hierarchy are slaves, of course, who are often non-mages or conquered people from other nations. Many Dragon Age fans presume that elves have been the only slaves. Although today elves are the most common slaves in Tevinter, this wasn't always the case. Before the fall of Arlothan and the enslavement of the elven people, it was humans, particularly from Rivain and the Free Marches, who filled the ranks of the enslaved. Seriously, Tevinter used to enslave humans and Qunari as well, and even dwarves, which shows that some people from Tevinter, some bandits like Venatori or fanatics, if you want to call them that, they don't respect other races and nations of any kind. Did you know that dwarves have a strong trade alliance with Tevinter? We'll talk about it in the next videos, but yeah. Imagine going to the market for some lyrium and then adding a merchant himself to your basket, because why not? What will you do, little non-magical humanoid? Stomp me to death? That's actually a great idea when someone tries to enslave you, but anyway. Slavery is a cornerstone of the Tevinter economy, and slaves perform most of the hard labor in the empire. Even though slaves can belong to both magical and non-magical backgrounds, it is more common for non-mages to be enslaved because they can't protect themselves. The Altus and Laetan families often own numerous slaves, which further reinforces their power. Liberati, though, is the most curious class of them all, I think. Here's why. Slave uprisings are frequent, but rarely successful, as are attempts by Tevinter politicians to abolish the practice of slavery. So, even though it is legal in Tevinter, many upper-class citizens dislike the whole thing and its concept. Slaves can only be legally freed before a judge, with their owner present to make the decree, or by the owner's will upon their death. The sad news is that freed slaves are still not considered citizens of Tevinter. Those who achieve freedom are reclassified from slaves into the Liberati. Technically, it's a subclass, and those within it are granted limited rights. Liberati allowed to act as an apprentice in a trade or join a circle of magi, if they have any talent. They also can own land and property, but they can't join the military and rarely have a say in governance. I wonder why. The legislative body of Tevinter is known as the Imperial Senate. The Senate is divided into two houses, the Publicanium and the Magisterium. The former is the lower house, and in contrast with the Magisterium, it holds no true power, and it is practically a bureaucratic body. Imagine that senators of the Publicanium are elected officials with real elections. Do we believe that, though? The Magisterium is the ruling body of Tevinter, composed of the most powerful mages from the Altus and occasionally Laetan classes. It's not correct to call all Tevinter mages magisters, as some people from southern Thedas do when they talk about them, because magisters are unique. They are both political and magical leaders, responsible for making laws, maintaining order, and managing foreign relations. Their status gives them a significant advantage over the lower classes. Even though it might seem that being a magister is the highest position, it is not. The Archon is the supreme ruler of Tevinter. Their authority, like their magical power, is said to be God-given, whether that god is one of the old gods or the Maker. Very convenient. The Archon may appoint magisters to the Magisterium at any time and has the final say on any laws under consideration. The role of the Archon is typically inherited, either as blood relatives to the previous Archon or as their former apprentice. The reigning Archon is supposed to designate their heir before their death. If it doesn't happen, the Magisterium does its thing. While the Imperial Chantry in Tevinter is distinct from the Andrastian Chantry elsewhere in Thedas, it still holds some influence. If you just discovered that there are two main churches in Thedas, please watch my video about Andraste, her life and connection to Tevinter. After all, it was a Tevinter Archon Hesarian who killed her. So, coming back to Tevinter. The Black Divine, the head of the Tevinter Imperial Chantry, wields significant power but usually takes the mage's side in political matters. Unlike in other parts of Thedas, the Chantry in Tevinter doesn't suppress mages, but instead works alongside them, reinforcing the mage-led power structure. Even within the mage classes, there are hierarchies based on magical ability and specialization. Some specializations, like blood magic for example, are considered powerful and feared, though not illegal in Tevinter. Mages who excel in rare or particularly dangerous forms of magic may rise higher in the ranks. Overall, the class system among mages in Tevinter reinforces dominance of those with magical powers and noble bloodlines, particularly the Altus, while limiting the social mobility of non-mages and lower-ranked mages. The rigid structure maintains the Empire's traditions of mage superiority, but it also creates tensions between the various classes, especially as newer mage families challenge the old families for influence. Alright guys, let's start a discussion. What do you think about magocracy? The system is far from fair and therefore it has its limitations. Almost every country in the real world has a story about a poor citizen who changed their society and left an enduring legacy for the benefit of the people exclusively because of their low-class background, because of the experience a person can get from this class background. With all these scientific and magical wonders produced by the elite in Tevinter, it's often the lower classes who serve to sustain order, nurture half-baked projects, treat people, and fight for a better future. Let me know what you think about the class divisions and share your theories. What else can we expect in terms of narrative? Because, to tell you the truth, I fancy an epic rebellion. Have fun, play video games, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!